Hello friends, welcome to Healthcare Management Strategy app built in Flutter and Firebase. In first video, I've shown you a quick demonstration of this application. In second video, I've shown you the complete installation instructions so that you can deploy this application in your local environment. And in the third video, I have walked you through how to set up a fresh developed environment and get started with the Flutter. In fourth video, I've just uploaded. I have walked you through how to build a simple user application form which captures and input the user validations. You can find all the complete installation instruction in this README file. In case you have any issues, please feel free to open an issue log. Now, let me show you a quick demo. So in last video, as you see, this is the user input validation. So as user inputs any data, the form does the input validation reactively. Same thing with the password. And the sign in button gets activated only when all the users inputs are validated. Same thing with another form called settings. See, it knows that, it expects a valid email, 5 characters name, and a valid phone number. Let me put 123000. And as you can see, it's not a valid phone number. So let me change it to something which is really valid, 732. See, now the save buttons get activated. Now let's go click on the hamburger menu and see the navigation item. In this video, I'm going to show you how this navigation changes based on the user's role. And in the later part of the video, we'll build a complete admin console so that you can assign roles to a user profile, and this menu navigation item changes according to the user's given role. All right, so enough with the demo. Let's get started with the code. So let's open a browser window and head out to console.firebase.com. And you can use an existing project. Just in case, I'm going to create a new project in this case, add a new project and give it a name. Let me give it a name, say test TMP, create, and it's going to take a few seconds. All right. Okay, so my project is almost ready. Now, once your project's ready, I want you to go to Authentication tab. Now, this is where this is required if you want to set up the social authentication for your application. In this case, I'm going to choose two different types of authentication, email and password. Make sure you enable it. And please pay attention to these settings. So these are all the authenticated domains. So in your case, whenever you are doing the development, make sure that localhost is listed out there. All right, there are other settings as well. So this, whenever you deploy it to the production, please come back and adjust these settings appropriately as per your business requirement. Next thing I want to set up is another type of social authentication using Google. So let's go choose Gmail. I'm going to enable it. I think it will ask for a default email ID. Let me give my email ID here. Save. I think that's pretty much it. That's all it takes to set up your social authentication. So again, depending on your business requirement, please pick appropriate categories. I'm going to only show you that two different categories, email ID and Gmail. All right. So next thing I want to do, head out to your Cloud Firestore database. You have two different choices here, set up in production mode or set up in test mode. Most probably, most of the time guys use test mode, but I want you to pick up the production mode. And the only difference is production mode, everything is going to block access to every collection from the beginning. So everything will be the false. And this is actually the good practice if you are a beginner programmer, so that this forces you to start using Firebase rules since the beginning. So I'm going to pick up the false. That means the production mode, and everything will be blocked by default. All right. So let me go publish this. Save. Okay, now let's go back to the data store. As you can see, my data store is blank. There is nothing out there. So far I have set up the authentication. I set up the Firebase rules, which is blocked. That means which is false for everything, no access to anything. Okay, now let's go back to project settings. What I'm looking for, I need to create a web app because I want to access this Firebase from my Flutter application. So I'm going to create a web app, a register app, give it a name, and then what I want to copy all of this Firebase config variables and use those variables inside my index.html file so that my Flutter should be able to access this Firebase. So let's go head out to index.html, which is inside web directory. So let's look for a folder called web. Inside web folder, most of the time you work, the files, all your working files are under the lib directory. This is the only file which you will find other than assets file, of course. So inside this web directory, you'll find it called index.html, and index.html in the body part, you want to include this Firebase config variables here. So let's go paste it out. No, I think that's not the appropriate way. Let me go back to my repository, see, just to check how I included it in my original application. Oh, it has to be wrapped inside the script tag. So let's copy paste the whole thing there. Go back to your index.html and make sure this script tag sits on its own. So it should be on of its own block. Okay. Now inside this script block, I want to change this Firebase config variable here. So let's go copy paste this again one more time. Delete this. Okay, and make sure you don't see any error. Okay. So now this looks good now. I hope so. Okay, next thing I want to do here, let's go to pubspec.yaml file. So remember in last video, because we are having error, because we included the Cloud Firestore SDK. So this is the time to bring that back here, because now we are going to integrate this application to Firestore Cloud, Firestore collections. So let me save this. As soon as you save this, I think it's going to automatically update your Dart packages here. So, okay. So now I think most of the things is ready. Now let's try to, you see, remember like last video, we just created a, bare skeleton user forms, like settings form, login form, and sign up form. There's no connection. So for example, if you are in settings page, you don't know how to go to login page. And if you're on login page, you don't know how to go to sign up page. So from this sign in page, that means login page, I want to create a link here, which should take you back to the sign up page. So again, the long story short, this is the time to work on your routes. So if you recall, we created all the skeleton files. So I'm going to uncomment all the routes here so that we can include those routes and create those navigation here. So I'm going to uncomment all of this about us, login and sign up page and settings page, uncomment, and let's go to signup.dart. All right, and make sure. No, let's head out to, so from about us page, I need to go to login page, which is fairly simple. Now in login page, I need to create a link which will take it to the sign up page. So for example, if the user it doesn't have a login, you need to give him a chance. That means a method so that user can go create their own new account. So let me serve this application. Then it will make more sense. So Flutter run -d Chrome. Okay. All right. This is new error. So, okay, this is, I think, because I upgraded my Flutter and Dart SDK. So now what I need to do, I need to run this application with no sound null safety check. Okay, so this is the flag. If I run this with this flag, so it's not going to check null safety. Again, we'll come back to this and address this later because I just upgraded it. I don't want to spend too much time on this one. So let's go just run this. I want to make sure that my pages are running fine, okay, without any error. So let's go try to run this. Login.dart. So after this sign in page here, I want to create that link. So let me create a new container. Inside that container, I'm going to create a button. And once you click that button, it should take you to the page, to the sign up page. So let me create that. Okay, on press. And I'm going to include the navigation and push it to the sign up. And same thing, I want to do that back to the sign up page. So if the user doesn't have an account and he has the login page, so the user should say, okay, do you need an account? Or like create an account, and then he goes to the sign up page. And from sign up page, if the user already have an account, he should be able to come back to the login page. Pretty simple. So as you see, instead of button, I decided to use gesture detector, and it's almost the same thing, but I need a chip or I need some kind of a button so that I can wrap that gesture detector on top of that button. So let me say chip. Okay, and I'm going to give it some like little fancy icon. So I'm going to include a little icon there, and just then I write the text, say create a new account, something like that. Okay, and then what I need to do, see, okay, this looks good now. So it's just another type of button. I wrapped it inside gesture director, so to give it a different look and feel. Otherwise, it will look very similar to sign in batch, which I don't want. So now what I can do, I can just copy paste the whole thing and put it under the sign up page here, and just change the name and the route. So let me copy, paste, and go to sign up. And here, what I want to say, because I already, so this route will be login, and I'll say I already have an account. Instead of create an account, I will say I already have an account. So if the user clicks on this button, it will take him back to the login page. And for the login, if the user decide to create a new account, it will take the user to the sign up page. All right, let me just save this, compile this one more time, and make sure test out the navigation. So navigation works pretty good now. Okay, that looks good. Now I want to include some kind of a navigation. So as soon as user clicks on sign in button, I want to show some kind of a progress indicator bar. So there's another, option is showing a spinner. So what I want to do here, I want to show a spinner and followed by an error or success message. So I'm going to create some generic components which I can use it throughout the application. So whenever, again, go back to the custom style. So for example, if you want to show some error, so I'm going to create some text style. So for the error, I'm going to say constant C error text, and I'm going to, give it a, weighted font, and I want to give it a red color. Same thing, I want to create something, a text style for warnings or text style for success. So success, obviously, I want to make it in green, and warning is yellow. So let me go create one more constant for C success text. And text style, same thing for weight. I want to make it consistent. The only colors will be different. So now I have this text styles. I want to create a couple of enums. So again, once you see those, if you don't know what enums is, don't worry about this. We'll cover those in details. So enum is I'll give it only two options. Either is an error or it's in success. So if it is an error, so I want to show the red text, and it is success, I want to show it the green text. So I'm going to define two different enum. And now I defined all the constants. So now let's go create some couple of the components here. I want to create a custom spinner. So custom spinner again is going to be a dot class, and I'm going to make it a stateless widget. So wherever this custom spinner will be called, it's going to accept one parameter. So Boolean toggle spinner. If toggle spinner equals to true, it will show the spinner. Otherwise, it will not show the spinner. So let me make a default constructor here. It takes a key, default constructor. And next thing I want to do, I want to return a widget here. So return widget, and what this widget is going to do is going to only check the toggle spinner. If toggle spinner equals to true, show some kind of a animation. So I'm going to use a circular progress indicator. By default, again, is another widget, is a deliver widget. So I is going to say toggle spinner equals to true, show this circular indicator widget. Otherwise, don't do anything. Likewise, let's create this custom message. So custom message is going to be very tricky. I want to use one custom message widget, and I want to use it for displaying any error or displaying any success message as well. So we have to be a little bit tricky here. So here I'm going to define three different variables. First, let's define some kind of a toggle message. Okay. And second thing, I want to define a message type. It's a success or it's an error. And third thing is the actual message itself. So let me create another constructor here, which takes these three parameters here. So again, the toggle message for yes or no, and for showing or hiding, and second is the message type, that means showing the error or success, or showing the color in red or green, and that third thing is the message itself. So now let me return a widget here. So again, custom message, and I'm going to, in this widget, I'm going to change the style, and the style will be based on the message type. Otherwise, the text will be very simple. It's going to be whatever the text is passed, whenever this custom message is initialized, it's going to display that text. All right, looks good now. I apologize, guys. Sometimes I rush through the code because I have to cover a lot of code here. So if you have any trouble, please always refer back to my GitHub repository, and you'll be able to find the actual code, what I wrote. Fine. So now we have all our custom text style and custom widgets available here. Let's go to login.dart, and I want to create a couple of variables here, like spinner visible, message type, and message text. Again, because these are the variables is going to support those two components what we just created. So spinner visible and message visible, message type, and message actual text. Okay. Now let's go create a couple of functions here. So first thing I will need is say toggle spinner. Let's go create a new function called toggle spinner. And again, all toggle spinner, whenever the toggle spinner will be called, is going to create a set state and is going to reset that variable. So toggle inside the toggle spinner, I'm going to use set state, and all it's going to do, like spinner visible is going to reverse the state of spinner visible. For second method, show message. So inside that show message, same thing I want to do. So show message, whenever the show message is called, is going to take all those three variables: message visible, type, and message itself. So it's going to reverse the state of message visible. So if it's a visible, then you do not make it a true or false becomes true. And inside that set state, I want to reset that message type. So if message type equals to error, show the text in red color, otherwise green color, and same thing, and then you display the actual text itself. So now show message and show toggle spinner, these two methods are already available there, and I'm going to use those methods whenever whenever we are going to access the server or database, and it does something out there. All right, so it looks good. Now these are very constant methods, and you will see that I'm going to make extensive use of these two methods and these custom spinners everywhere else in the application. So you write it once and then use it over and over again. Okay, so now let's go start writing our actual code. Now this is the time where I want to connect to the database here. But before I do that, let me include those two custom spinners and custom message widgets what we just created. And this is the time I'm going to include inside that constructor, pass some default variable. Default variable is by default toggle spinner, and custom message is false. That means do not show anything yet. So as you can see, custom message, it expects three different parameters. So let me pass all those three: toggle message is visible, and message type, and actual message text. Okay, all right, now it looks good. So by default, everything is false. So these two messages will not show up. This will only show up when user does something. So now let's look at the sign in button. Sign in button, as you can see, is null right now. Now let's add a function. So the moment user clicks the sign in button, I want to go to fetch data from server. So let's go define a function called fetch data. And it takes two different parameters. One is the auth block, and second is the login type. You will see that in a minute what login type does. So what login type is, if you recall, we included two different types of social authentication methods. One with the email and password, and other was with Google. And I just marked it, as you say, I marked it as async. So as soon as you click on this, first thing I want you to do, I want a spinner to run. So let me, instead of the null here, this is where I'm going to call that function. Okay, toggle spinner. So let's start showing the spinner, and then what I want to declare a variable called user auth. And what I want to do, if the login type is valid, that means make sure that this function is called properly. And then if login type equals to Google, then call the sign in method for Google, which is actually, you will see Google, you have to define an auth provider, but we'll do that in auth block. So here I'm just going to simply call a function sign in with Google, and as you can see, it's giving you a red error because that function doesn't exist. But don't worry about it, we are going to write all the server specific code in auth block file. So here, as you can see, login type equals to Google, call the Google method. If not, then call the sign in email method. And then what we want to do here, so model, okay, when you're calling the model, take a look at the model. What model is, it keeps the two values, email and password. So this is the value when you're calling the method called sign in with email. These are the two values you want to pass into that function. And again, once we write that function, you will see it will make a lot more sense. So whatever is the output of these functions are, we are going to capture. We capture those in user auth. And now is the time, if user auth is not blank, that means the login is successful. So we'll show the message that with the message saying, hey, login is successful, or end user is authenticated. Okay. If the user auth has any issue, any error from the server, and we want to display that error. So again, this is where I'm going to make use of those functions or those widgets what we just created, show message, and I'm going to pass those values here. If there's an error, depending on the error, like user not found, email password is not valid, you can do if and else, it depends like how far you want to go. But idea is you want to display the appropriate error message depending on the error you receive from the server. All right, and the last thing, as you can see, I want to say if user, and then you just toggle the spinner. That means like switch the default state, because now you have received the response from the server, so go back and reset that spinner. All right, this looks good. Right now it's giving error, but don't worry about this, so we'll fix this later. So login type. Okay, now let's go back to that sign in button. So here we want to say fetch data, and inside that fetch data, because this function we just created, it was expecting two parameters, auth block and email, because this is the button used to authenticate email and password based sign in. So let me just copy paste this thing here, because remember, like we have to create another sign in method which is for Google. So I'm just going to copy paste and just say sign in with Google. Okay, and this time the fetch data, instead of email, I'll just say okay, fetch data and pass the value Google. So that's how when you click this button, it knows okay, I have to call the function sign in with Gmail, otherwise call the function sign in with email. Pretty easy. Let me change this back to Gmail, Google. Okay, that looks good now. Let me save this. So right now I think we have a few errors. Fetch data. Okay, looks good. So I think the error is because we have not declared those functions yet. So let's go head out to auth.block.dot file and start creating those two methods. So in auth.block.dot, as you can see, is a very simple file here. I'm going to include first call of those packages here, what we just create, included in our pubspec.yaml file. Firebase auth package. Okay, and then so let's go create these two functions. But before I do that, recall we created two different functions again here. Okay, is signed in and logout. So let's go back to. So that's the advantage of writing everything inside the block. You have all your server related code here, and that's what if in future, if you want to decide instead of Firebase you want to use another database, you'll be able to do that. But here, okay, let's go focus on this. So I'm going to initiate Firebase instance, Firebase auth, and I'm going to create a auth and Firebase auth.instance. So I just created an instance of the Firebase auth. Now I can use this auth variable anywhere I want. So when I say is signed in, all I need to do auth.current user is not equals to null. So it will tell you that user exists or not. So it is as simple as that. Same thing with sign out. All I need to do auth dot, and I call the sign out method there. One thing you might have just noticed that I wrapped it around a try catch block. It's a very good practice. Whenever you're writing this kind of functions, always write those in a try and catch. So while I'm here, logout is done. Let's create other functions. So first method, if you remember, sign in with email. Let me go back and check what were the two functions we defined. So login.dot, I think there were two functions, sign in with email and sign in with Google. So let's create these two functions here. Okay, let's go to auth.block.dot. Okay, I'm going to create this function, sign in with email, and as you can see, when you call this function sign in with email, you pass model, and model is the data model which has the email and password. So sign in with email, and here I'm going to again create a try and catch block, and inside the try block I'm just going to call Firebase auth.instance, and I'm going to there's a delivered method, sign in with email and password. All I need to do inside that method is expect two different parameters, email and password. So email is the model, whatever the form data we are passing, we just need to say form data dot email and form data dot password. It's as simple as that. Now same thing with the sign in with Google. So actually it's just even simpler because there is no form data. Okay, all you need to do, copy paste this and just call this function. And here the only difference is you have to create a path provider class, and you have to instantiate that class, and just use this as a variable. Await Firebase auth dot instance dot sign in with Google, and you pass that Google Auth provider here. If you are using Facebook, same thing, Facebook Auth provider, and the method will be very, very similar. All right, so these two functions are defined yet. While I'm here, let me create another method. Remember sign up, so we'll be using that. So just to finish it off, sign up with email. And again, this is very similar with sign in with email, because you have to pass the form data. So sign up with email, same thing, you pass the form data, and the only difference is you just change the function. Instead of sign in, just say sign up with email and password, pass the email and password, whatever is coming from the form, and it's going to call that function on the Firebase. All right, it looks pretty good now. Let's go back to login.dot. For some reason, it's still showing me these errors. The error should disappear for now. Let me. So I think I know what the problem is, because I kind of like look at my class, it's just ending here. So I wrote this function outside the class, so that's why it's not, even if I initialize that, it's not recognizing that. So let me cut this here and paste it inside that class. Paste it here, save. See, the error is gone. Okay, usually it's very when you're using VS Code, it immediately tells you where the problem is. So while I'm here, let's go back to look for Flutter documentation, just to make sure that we are not missing anything. Google Flutter Fire, and go to their GitHub repository, browse to their documentation, because these things changes every day. Depending on when you are watching the video, these installation requirement may change, so please read the documentation appropriately. As you can see, I was using the open-ended. That means I didn't declare the packages versions I was using, and as you can see, respecting the two different versions here. So let me just copy paste those things here. So I want to comment it out, the older version what I was using. I want to use the specific version mentioned on that Flutter Fire website. So please, I highly recommend you do the same thing depending on when you're watching the video. Same next thing is, as you can see, it for web only, because we are running the web version here. What it wants to do, it wants you to include those JavaScript file to your index.html. I have already done that, but please do that again. Please go through the documentation, because depending on when you're watching this video, things may have changed. So let me do these things here. So just make sure that all my variables are defined. Firebase is initialized here. Now let me include those two JavaScript files here. Now it looks good. Pubspec YAML looks good. Now let's go start running this. So here I'm going to do a little bit different. So create dot, whatever, if you have an existing application, if you want to use it a web version, that means if you're using Flutter Web SDK, it's not, it actually is required, is a good practice. So always run this command, flutter create dot. Okay, let me go through the documentation again. One more thing, I think WebDriver. So let's go back here. So here I think I just ran this command. Now I want to run a specific command, flutter run -d Chrome, but I want to, for the null safety, I'm going to pass that flag. I'm also going to, this time I'm going to run with a WebDriver flag, and I'm going to specify a port number, say localhost 5000. And the reason I'm doing that, because whenever you are running your Firebase testing on your local host, remember when you created the Firebase project, we defined a safe domain called 5000. That means localhost. So make sure that you're using the localhost again. Okay, let me run this again. Hopefully this will compile and it will not give me any error. In your browser, localhost :5000 looks okay. So it looks pretty good. Let me put some values here. Let me open the developer console so that we can see any error if there is any. Let me put some user ID and password. Click on sign in button. So hopefully at this time my login should be activated. So it's giving me an error. Unknown error has occurred. So one way to debug this, let's do one thing. So in fetch data, it was giving an user auth output. So let's go print that. So that way you will know what the issue is. So I'm just going to say print user auth. Okay, save this, go to your terminal window, hit R, that means refresh this window again, put the user ID and password, any user ID and password, doesn't matter. All right, click on sign in, invalid email. Okay, that's fine. So let's go, in the error, see if the error message, like, we didn't catch that error. So we can change it. Like, again, it's good idea to show the appropriate error coming from the server. You could have just printed the user auth in the error message text, but let me just put this here. Let me try it one more time. So this time it should show the actually appropriate error. Okay, put any password, doesn't matter, sign in. See, so at least we fixed the error. It's showing the right error. So now, but it still is, that doesn't solve the problem. We have to fix the actual error. So the server response is invalid email. Let me go. I think it's at this point it's more appropriate to first fix the signup.dot file, because I want to create a user first and then I go back to login.dot and validate that. So let's do one thing, and it's going to be a very similar file. The only difference is I'm going to call the sign up method instead of sign in method. So let's do one thing. We have already defined our custom components. So let me start by those 4 variables and start inserting those spinner and message first. So let's do one thing. Let's start with those 4 variables what we just defined. So here, sign up, we already have those variables here. Now let me copy paste those 2 methods what we just created. I'm going to copy paste all 3 methods, and later we'll change the fetch data method here. And then all I need to do, copy paste those custom spinner code. So where it go, custom spinner and custom message. Again, these are the widgets that are not going to change. I'm going to just make use of these widgets everywhere. So go to your sign up page and include those 2 widgets here right before the sign in or create an account, whatever that submit button is. Okay, paste it over here. At this point it might show a couple of errors. Okay, a lot of errors, because we have not included those packages here. So we had the custom components. So I think we defined those in custom components and custom style. Let me just include those files here. So custom style was already there. Let me delete that. All right, this looks good now. So most of the errors, as you can see, are gone. So just to recap, we created the variables, we added those custom spinner, we added those toggle messages and show message, toggle spinner. Now let's go work on the fetch data. The only difference is we don't need a login type because it's just a sign up method. So sign up is like here we don't need all of this if and else condition. We only need, so I'm going to get rid of everything and just keep it very simple. So only need to say user auth equals to auth block dot sign up with email. We don't need any of these methods here. So let me get rid of all these things here. Okay. So sign up with email password, and this is the method we already created. Okay, and then it comes with a user auth and then you show the message appropriately. Okay, I have to fix the message as well. So let me get rid of all these things. I'm just going to for sign up, I have written down the specific messages here. These are static text, and you will be able to change it as per your requirement. All I'm saying, hey, user is already authenticated. We have created an account for you, and that's it. Whatever the message you want to display. So it's a static text, doesn't matter. Okay, right now still I'm seeing few errors here. Let me see what those errors are. So logout method is not defined. Logout is created, actually it is there. So logout. Okay, anyway, we don't need logout function. Okay, sorry about that. We don't need logout function here, but it's still giving me some error. Context is not valid. Oh, okay. So because you see even the class is not valid. It looks like there's a simple parenthesis error, curly braces error. Sorry about that. Let me get rid of this. See, save this. Sorry, it was a very honest copy paste mistake here. Let me save this. At this point, it should be working fine now. We paste everything. So let's go Control J, hit refresh, and then just try to create login function. Sorry, this is the login page. We need to go to sign up page here. So let me try creating a new account here. Any email, valid email, sign up password, invalid email. So it looks like, oh, we haven't called that function yet. Okay, so it's null. Sorry about that. So we have to say fetch data auth block, save it, and this time run it again. So now this is going to call the fetch data. I have to refresh it, I believe. Refresh it. Email, password, create a new account. Unknown error. Okay, so let's do one thing. Let's go, and nothing has been created on the authentication. So whenever the moment it creates a user, you will see something in your Firebase console over there. Okay, let me see. So Let's print that user auth. All right, so let me say print user auth, save, Control J, go to terminal window, hit R, refresh. Now let's go to browser window again. I'm going to refresh this app one more time. When you're running it on localhost, you have to manually refresh it. Otherwise, it refreshes on its own. So because I'm using localhost 5000, so I have to refresh it. Okay, so let's go put it. It says invalid email. So for some reason, when you're creating the account, it's not. Okay, I see what the problem is. Okay, so let's go to signup dot file and let's go to that form. Sorry, yeah, let's try to print that. Print form data dot email. Let's see what is coming from the form. So let's go save this, refresh one more time. So we want to see what value I am the user is input and what is going to the database for validation. Oh, it's taking the password into the email field. That's not right. So let's go to signup.dot file here. Let's check out that email field and password field. So if you go to email, it looks good. Model.email.value, it looks good. Let's check the password field one. Okay, here, see that? So that was again honest copy paste mistake here. So that's why it was overwriting. It was putting password into the email field. So let me save it, and I'm 100% positive this is going to work this time. So put an email ID, password, create a new account. Wonderful. See, user is logged in already and it knows that user is signed in. Let's go to authentication, refresh it, and you should see a user here. So this is bingo, so we are able to, and that was the reason why login dot was not working. So now we are able to create a user, we are able to authenticate the user. So 2 milestones have been completed. Okay, now I think we have to work on the role level security, right? So for example, if the user has been already authenticated, how do we define the roles? So now let's go to settings.dot and it's going to be we are going to set up the whole user authentication mechanism in settings. So I'm going to close everything and let's start fresh. Let's open the settings data model. So if you recall, settings data model is very similar to login data model, but we need 2 more fields here. One is role, other is the author, and you will see why. Role is what is that this person is an admin or guest, and author is who is writing this document. That means who is making the update. So let me clear the constructions here. Just to remind you, I will need a factory JSON method here and I'll explain that why you need that. We'll come back to this later. But for now, we have this setting data model with 2 inside settings.dot. As you can see, there's an error because I need to fix the constructor here as well. So let me add these 2 fields, what we just added, role and author. All right, so now the error is gone. Next thing I will need the Cloud Firestore package. So let me go to browse into pubspec.yaml file here, and I want to include the Cloud Firestore as a dependency. Let me save this. Hopefully in a few seconds it will go get the package. All right, let me close this out. So inside your auth.block.dot file here, now let's import that package. So import package, and I'm going to say cloud firestore dot. Okay, all right. So now I can call that collection. So this collection doesn't exist yet, but let's go collection reference dot users. So users is the collection what will have all the user related information. It doesn't exist yet. I'm just going to initiate that. Okay. So now I can call this user collection anywhere inside my application. Now to call that, so remember this page is a little different. We need 2 different methods here. Set data and get data. Set data means user will use this in Flutter form to set the data into database, and at the same time the user will need another method called get data so that he can retrieve and show the show the information what was saved in the database. Get data, I'm going to mark this as a future async because it's going to get to the database and get the value asynchronously. Next thing I want to do, I want to check if the user is authenticated. So I'm going to say auth.current user is not equals to null. Now if that user not null, that means user is already authenticated. Sometimes it happens that user can directly is not even authenticated, he logged out, and you want to retrieve the data, so you don't want that. So simply what I'm going to say is users collection dot doc, and inside that doc, the doc ID is the user's UID. That means the user signed in ID. Okay, dot UID, and then simply you do the get. So this will get the document and all the information saved inside the database. All right, so this looks pretty simple. Next thing I want to do is set data. Very similarly, set data is the, whenever I'm going to click on that submit button, set data is the function which will be called. So let me mark this as an async and future, but because this is setting that, so I can say this is of type void. That means it's not returning anything. So future void set data, and I want to pass the form data inside this set data. So whatever values are stored in the setting data model, I want to pass those values inside that set data. All right. So now here and now simply I can call this user collections. I will say return users, and then I will say dot doc, and doc ID is the user's authentication ID. That means UID, and then dot set. Now inside the set method, all I need to do pass the values which I want to store into the database. So again, these values are coming from the form. So it's very simple. Name equals to form data dot name, and then similarly all the fields are coming from that except one. I'll show you in a minute what. So name, email, phone number, and author. Actually, role is the role, but author is something. The user's UID is the author. That means the person who is authenticated, your unique ID is the author ID, and the same ID is used as a document ID. So that's the trick to quickly retrieve the database as in a particular document from the database. All right, so it looks good now. Now let's go get all the static variables what we created in login files there. Similarly, because these things are to support that custom spinner and custom message, except one new. So I'm going to say boolean is admin equals to false, and you will see what is this variable. This is the variable which will be used to display the navigation. All right. So next thing I want to do here. Everything looks good. Now let's go start creating a couple of the methods. So as soon as the form, this component, this Flutter widget is loaded, what I want to do, I want to get the data. So get the data, whatever is stored into the server. So I'm going to call the get data method here. Now remember, get data doesn't exist yet. So we'll create the method called get data. So again, all of those server related, the database related logic is written in auth block. So we will access that those classes here. But for now, let's go create the method called get data. And inside that get data, what you want to do, I'm going to create those helper functions, show message and toggle spinner from login file, because I need those things here. So the reason is as soon as you get data, I want to show a spinner. So let's say initiate the toggle spinner, and initiate it one more time. I call this function, one more time. And inside the toggle spinner, I'm going to, between these two functions, I'm going to write the actual get data method, which is going to be very, very simple. All I need to do here, I will say message visible equals to true. Now, then what I want to do here, if auth block dot is signed in, first I need to check if the user is signed in. Then simply all I need to do here is go to that auth block and the method we have created, dot get data. Let me go check get data dot. And I'm going to call it then. So then means whatever the value, then is a promise. So whatever the value is coming from the database, I'm going to take the results, call a set state, and I'm going to call it another function called update form data. Now this is where I'm deserializing the data. What it means is the data coming from the database is in the format of JSON, and I do need to convert that JSON into the fields which my setting data model understand. So that's what called, I have extensive topic where I've covered this topic about serializing and deserializing data, how to read the data from the server and map it using factory JSON method here. That was I was referring to when I defined the setting data model. So I have this from that JSON factory data that model which deserializes the data which is coming from the database. So okay, let's go back to settings.data. And I'm going to include that link to that video tutorial if you're interested. All right, so let's go back here. So all I need to do authblock document dot get data and update form field. Right now, I think this function doesn't exist yet. That's why it's complaining about. So let me create this function called update form data. Again, very simply, whatever the value is coming from the database, I'm going to map those JSON fields to the fields in Flutter form. So I need to because it's defined in a static variable here, let me more appropriately define that. So I'm going to create an instance of the setting data model class what we earlier created. So form data and settings data model, and I'm going to define a constructor here. By default, I'm going to initialize all this value with blank. So let me get rid of the name. Okay, so this is, again, the idea is this form data. This is where I will store all these fields, and this is the field because this is getting used in all the controllers. So that's how the interaction, that means like setting the data, getting the data from the database, assigning it to the form fields is happening here. So again, right now is very simple. Now all I need to do, form data dot data equals to, and just map it to the, whatever the data is coming from the database. Okay, now this is the tricky part here. This is not actually a trick. Simply, what it is doing is reading all the values stored into the database for this particular user ID, and all it says, okay, if the form data dot data, and if the role for this user is an admin, then it's just say is admin equals to true. Otherwise, just pretend that this user is not an admin. Same thing goes for, if you want to define multiple roles, define all the variables here and simply say, okay, this role equals to whatever is the role is stored in the database. That's how you capture the role. And you will see that later how I'm using this field, using this variable to control the navigation. Okay, now let's go focus on the other fields here. Email controller, and the rest of the things are very simple. Email, name, and email, phone, and name. Okay, so whatever the value is coming from the database, I'm going to map those one by one here very simply. Okay, so update form field. Okay, is admin. Similar to get data, set data is no brainer. It's absolutely the same method. It's like the same method what we have created for login and sign up. So very simply, we have already defined that method here, or I'm just going to like toggle spinner and then message visible, and then all I'm going to say users the whatever the method we have created dot set data, and I'm going to pass all the form data values inside that set data function, okay, as parameters here, and then it should I'm fast forwarding that, and again, simply the whatever the value is coming from the server, you show the message appropriately if the data is saved or if there is an error. Last thing I want to do here, recall that submit button. So we need to go to the submit button, and the set data method what we have just created, we need to call that function here. So set data, and I'm going to pass auth block here simply. Okay, so now this implementation, the get data is complete, set data is complete, and this implementation is complete. Now let's go work on the navigations. Navigation is going to be very, very simple. So in the scaffold drawer, you call that like, I'm calling text navigation. Let me get rid of this thing. And this is where I want to manipulate the navigation. It's very simple. Now we already know that this person is an admin or not. So very simply what we want to do, if the person is an admin, that means admin is equal to true, show the admin drawer. If it's not admin, show some other drawer. This is, and because it's giving you an error because these components are not defined yet. Again, it's not a good idea to define all the navigations here. Define those in your custom file here, and then so look at all the flow. So the values coming from the get data, it's passed on to this update form field, and here we know the role is equals to admin or role equals to employee. Same thing. That's how you implement the role level security. You can have as many roles as you want. Here you can set up if the role is equals to admin, this is admin equals to true. If the role equals to employee, then you say is employee equals to true, and then that's how you manipulate the left hand drive. That's how you set up the navigation. Now again, we will talk about the database level of security later, but right now let's just focus on the client side. So in the client side, that's how I'm going with the assumption we have only two roles, is admin and non-admin. Okay, so let me call that custom components, because right now it's giving an error because we haven't defined the navigation items there. So let's go define those two drawer, custom admin drawer, that means custom admin navigation, whatever you want to call it, or custom guest navigation. So I'm going to put those things inside those custom style and custom components. So let's go to the custom component dot, and here I'm just going to create two. I already have done this, the navigation. These are static text related files, so I'm not going to spend too much time on that one. Let me just copy paste this thing. So these are all the navigation items. So let me just copy the whole thing there, paste it there. Custom admin drawer and custom guest drawer. So let's go back here. Okay, it's blue because it's not defined yet. No, haven't. Sorry, I apologize, I haven't copy and pasted it yet. So let's go back here. Okay, custom admin drawer. So what we want to do here, we want to create those two components, custom admin drawer and custom guest drawer. Okay. Again, I don't seem to have latest code, so let me get it from my GitHub repository here. I'm going to close out all of these things here. So, oh, here you go. Okay, so these are the two classes I want. Custom admin drawer and custom guest drawer. So let me copy these things here. Copy. And go back to my custom.components and include those two widgets here. I think it's giving error because the keys are not are included. Okay, now here you go. Okay, so now this looks good. So we have two navigation items, so two different navigations for admin and for not an admin. All right, it looks pretty simple. Now let's go work on, because you see you have worked on the client side roles, but it doesn't mean that your application is secure. Now is the time to, and make sure, please make sure that you write appropriate rules so that your Firebase, your database, this is what actually matters. Anybody can hack into your client side application, so it's very important for you to secure your database. Otherwise it's totally is worthless. Your role level is not, it doesn't, the hackers can hack into your app and they can do a lot of damage there. So I have another tutorial on this one, how to set up the Firebase rules, and I have defined, like again I have covered that in extensive detail. That's an hour-long video, and I will include the link to that video here. Actually I have written blog, so I will show you that blog in a minute. But the point is, you will find all of these things, Firebase rules. Again, go back to my GitHub repository, installation instructions, and I'm going to copy paste those things here. Again, please do not, I'm copy pasting because I've already covered this topic in extensive details here, but I'm copy pasting very simple. So at present I have only one collection, which is users. So inside that users, I want to have rules for create. Anybody can create as long as the person is signed in. Read, the person can read only if he is the user or is an admin. So let me show you the blog again. It doesn't make sense. So this is the blog I'm talking about. This is the video I have covered in extensive details. So again, I'm going to include that link to this video. If you're wondering what is the admin function is, what is this doc function is, you will find everything in this document, in this blog here. And again, I have a video here somewhere here. Okay, let me show you. Yeah, this is how to set up the Firebase security. Okay, so again, this topic is covered in extensive details, but for now, okay, we are going to, it's very simple. We are going to cover, we have defined one user's collections here, and for users collections, for each operation, that means CRUD operation, create, read, write, I'm defining those things here. I'm defining the rules for that. And as you can see, the role here, the role is equals to admin. So this is, where the role is defined. So right now, again, so this is, right now we are just going with a guest or admin. First time you have to create a guest here. Again, now you need an admin console page, fully functional page, so that you can you can maintain these roles here. So again, I'm going to include that code to that admin panel as well. It's a very simple admin. Here you will find it. If you go to my GitHub repository, all you need to do nothing, like this code is already available there. You can copy paste. There are two files, admin and admin edit. All you need to make sure that you have included those two files in your app.dot routing, and that's it. Okay. So as you can see, these two codes are already out there. So these are helper code, which will only accessible to an admin, so that you can create, you can manipulate user. That means you can see the user and assign an appropriate role. That means is admin or employee or whatever you want to call it. You can manipulate that file. So this is how you set up the whole user role level security end to end. Again, these last two topics, I'm going to include the link to the tutorial so that it can help you out. I think that's all I have to cover. Sorry for this long video. There's a lot of code I have to write and a lot of explanation. I hope this helps you out. In case if you have any trouble, as usual, please go to my GitHub repository and go to issue log and please create a new issue. And please do not forget to subscribe and like this video. Thank you very much.